Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to the official college football week 4 AI betting predictions, where we look for the best possible odds based on the AI. And of course, we are looking for that dark yellow color where there is the biggest variance between the AI predictions and the overall official odds. A few games I want to talk about. The Virginia at Syracuse game. I do have the over in that one. It thinks the over is going to hit, but by less than a point. I wouldn't take much stock into that. And then the Baylor at Iowa State game is another one where I do like Baylor plus 2.5. They're down to plus 2, and they also like Baylor to win that game outright by just a point. But still, so you can take a look at some. They love the under in the Central Michigan Penn State game. I did not include that in my best bets. I was going to. I agree with them there. Taking a look at some of the bigger ones. Once again, Western Kentucky. Vegas is going to lose so much money putting that Western Kentucky FIU line. I believe it opened at 28.5. There it is, 28.5. Right now, I think it's been bet up to 30.5. FIU is horrible. They have Western Kentucky winning by 36.5 points. And again, it opened at 28.5. So there's major value. One of the best bets you can make, even if they're minus 30.5, I would still say is taking Western Kentucky minus 30.5 versus a horrible Florida International team. They love Cincinnati to cover at home against Indiana. I agree with this. This was not in my best bets video, but Indiana is horrible. I know Indiana is technically 3-0. Cincinnati at home, minus 15.5 against a team that's going to be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten. I think that's good value. Cincinnati, they lose to Arkansas, but they come back, and they're a solid program. Other bets, they like the under in the North Texas at Memphis game. I would not bet that. They like Notre Dame to cover. Of course, this system does not take into account injuries, so I would stay away from any Notre Dame game. They also have Texas covering by 4. They don't account injuries, so it doesn't know that Quinn Ewers is not going to play. Other games, they like Ole Miss to cover versus Tulsa. I agree. I'm surprised Ole Miss was only 20.5 point favorites. I think it's probably up to 21 or 22. This one is shocking to me. I don't know how this is the case, but they have California beating Arizona by 12 points. And the under, 27-15. I've got Arizona winning this game outright. So clearly me and the model don't agree on that one. Ball State at Georgia Southern. They love the under. I don't know enough about that game to bet it personally. Other games, really, there's not a lot of variance this week, unfortunately. The UNLV at Utah State game, they like the under. I personally wouldn't bet it, or I'd have to do research on it. This is the biggest one of the week. So UL Lafayette at UL Monroe. They love UL Lafayette, Louisiana Lafayette, to cover and win by 22, and they're only 12-point favorites. I don't know enough about that. They love the USC at Oregon State under. I completely disagree. I think this game's going to be very high scoring. That's just my opinion. They love the Stanford at Washington under. I agree 100%. Guys, right now, I would say the top 2 bets of the week, Stanford at Washington State, the under. What is the over-under? 61. It's probably been bet down. If it's at 61, Stanford at Washington State, at Washington, under 61. FIU at Western Kentucky, and Western Kentucky is minus 28.5. That's who I would take. To me, those are the 2 best bets. This Iowa-Rutgers game is pretty crazy. I checked it today. The line is actually down to 34.5, or the over-under is down to 34.5. I would not touch it. I understand people are doing the strategy where they bet the under on every Iowa game. I think I got it at 35.5 or maybe 36.5, 34.5 for a college game. If you get a pick six, if you get a short field, if it's 7-0 with 10 minutes left in the first quarter, it's very hard. You're basically hoping it's a 17-14 game, 27-7, 20-10. You need something like that. I'm still for taking the under on every Iowa game, but now that it's 34.5, it's so hard to go under that. Akron at Liberty. They only like Liberty by 3. Yeah, I think Akron is so bad, guys. They're so bad. Week 1, they beat an FCS team in overtime. They get destroyed in week 2 by Michigan State by 50. They get murdered by, I think, Tennessee in week 3 by like 55. I'm guessing 0-3 against the spread. I don't have the numbers in front of me. This was a game I was actually going to include, but I decided not to. The Toledo at San Diego State. I was going to take Toledo minus the 1. It was actually minus 1.5 when I looked earlier this week. They have Toledo covering. I was watching Toledo versus Ohio State, and they really impressed me, honestly, guys. Let me just look at the Ohio State game. Wisconsin at Ohio State. They have Ohio State winning by 15.5. So they have Wisconsin covering that. Yeah, only 2.7 though. There's very little. Like, guys, the only time I would trust the AI is if there's a big variance. Although I don't know, man. The USC Oregon State under. I mean, I guess because it's a big number. But I just think that game's going to be a shootout. I don't know. So, when it comes to the AI thing, the actual model, the computer numbers, it's a conversation starter, right? But it's not gospel. That's what we have to understand when it comes to this. I actually have the over in the Syracuse, Virginia game. Yeah, they've got I think I already talked about that. So, guys, those are just the overall numbers. They like Boise State over UTEP and the under in that. Yeah, that makes sense. UTEP is so bad. UTEP's offense is horrific. They like Mississippi State to cover against Bowling Green. Bowling Green beat Marshall. I don't know, man. 30 points for Mississippi State. I guess I would not touch that game with a 10-foot pole. Dude, they have the overhitting in Clemson, Wake Forest. I was actually going to include the under Clemson Wake Forest game in my best bets. I think Clemson completely shuts down Wake Forest one-dimensional offense, and then Clemson. I mean, I always say about Clemson, their offense is broken. Right now, their offense, with the way it's constructed, it is a broken offense. I like this game to be lower scoring. They've got it at 34-23. Kent State at UGA. They've got Georgia covering by 4. Maryland at Michigan. They've got Michigan barely covering. I would not touch that. They also have the underhitting. Guys, with Michigan, any of the computer models, I would stay away from trusting them on anything Michigan. The problem is Michigan has played 3 teams without a pulse, and they've run up crazy high margins, so the AI and the computer is going to really like Michigan because their dominance and their game control. But again, if you're facing UConn and you're facing Colorado State, and Hawaii, it's going to be very hard to actually judge how good your team is. Now, we're all human, so we look at Michigan destroying all these teams and looking dominant, and it's kind of hard to not say, well, Michigan's good, but you have to refrain from that and realize they're facing so horrific teams. Like, for example, I don't know. I would say, like, I was going to use UCLA as an example, but they almost lost to South Alabama. I would say, like, if UCF faced Hawaii, for example, I think UCF would win 56-7. Like, that's how bad Hawaii is. And it's nothing against UCF. And by the way, guys, I love UCF this week to cover the... it's 18? I thought UCF was minus 20. Oh, no. It was always 18. So I like UCF to cover the 18 against a completely dumpster fire of a program that is Georgia Tech. They like Oregon to cover. Yeah, so guys, the thing with Oregon, they're really getting propped up by the FPI, by the computer models. And you say, how does that happen? That's impossible. They lost 49-3. It's because the computer thinks so highly of Georgia, and then you also had Oregon completely dominate BYU and have total ball control, game control over them. they're really getting propped up. I like Washington State. I think Washington State was +7, weren't they? I feel like they were. That's where I picked them. So those are just some different games. But guys, again, I would say the best lock, at least right now, would be the Western Kentucky -28.5 versus FIU. It's up to, I think, -30.5. And then I love the Washington versus Stanford under. The under in that game, the over-under was at 61. It's crazy. Big overreaction to Washington's offense against Michigan State. They're due for a letdown, in my opinion. But guys, this is just the full data right here. What do they think of this game? Arkansas A&M neutral site game. They have the overhitting barely, and they have A&M covering by 0.9. In terms of what we would want to happen in this game, we're going to want probably A&M to win. Because there's no, in my opinion, I don't think A&M's beating Alabama. So A&M's probably going to lose at least 2 or 3 more games due to their quarterback situation. What we don't want to have happen is Arkansas become this top 7 or top 8 team in the country, which is what would happen if they beat A&M. So I would say what we need to do is root for A&M to beat Arkansas, and then root for, I wonder what they think of that Minnesota game. Minnesota at Michigan State, they have, oh my God, they have this game as a pure toss-up. Pick 'em, Michigan State, 0.2 favorite. They like Minnesota, they like Michigan State to cover. Wow. Guys, when it comes to the Minnesota-Michigan State game, we want Minnesota to win. Michigan State already has 1 loss, and it's a bad non-conference loss. They're going to lose to Ohio State. They're going to lose to Michigan on the road. They're probably going to lose to Penn State on the road. So they're going to have 4 losses. What we want to have happen is Minnesota get propped up as much as possible going into the Big Ten Championship. I don't know what other team Minnesota faces from the East. I don't know if they dodge, because they definitely dodge Ohio State. They're not on Ohio State's schedule. They are on Penn State's schedule, so that is disappointing, because that's Penn State's whiteout game. That's a game I really wish didn't happen, because one of the teams is going to lose and they're going to get knocked down, and that's what we don't want. But we're going to want Minnesota to beat Michigan State for the sake of the Big Ten. You want Minnesota because you look at the West, it's horrible. Wisconsin is going to lose to Ohio State. That's 2 losses already for Wisconsin. They already have a bad non-conference loss. Iowa sucks. And then really all you have is Minnesota at this point. So, Purdue has no defense. It really just comes down to Minnesota hopefully going into the Big Ten Championship, preferably with 1 loss, because I don't think they're going to beat Penn State in the whiteout. That would actually be a huge game. Minnesota might be able to go into that game unbeaten. I don't know when that game is, but that is interesting. So, guys, I just wanted to go over some of these. The actual model, this is the 2022 SP Plus. You can find it on Twitter, or just DM me on Twitter if you want it. I can tell you where it is. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.